Hello everyone, Darkid here. Today I'd like to show you a little redstone contraption I built that has to do with redstone signal length. Now I'm not talking here about the actual length of the signal, here I'm actually talking about the time, so the duration of the signal. So there's two halves to this machine, the right hand half is the decoder, the left hand half is the encoder. Pretty simply on the encoder, you hit any button, it'll give you a signal of that length, so 6. And then it'll go to this line here, and on the decoder, we get a signal length 6. This lamp will light up. Alright, I'm going to walk you through the encoder first. So, when you hit a button, it powers this, which powers a sticky piston, which pushes the block up. So this bit generates a pretty standard 1 tick pulse. Now, the 1 tick pulse itself I'm actually leaving off. I'll talk about that later. The 2 tick pulse goes to, the tick for the button corresponding to still makes a 1 tick pulse, but then this gets lengthened to 2 ticks and sent through. Similarly, 3 gets lengthened to 3 ticks, and 4 gets lengthened to 4 ticks. 4 goes into this block here, just because otherwise 5 would interfere with it. So, these all go straight down into this line and into the array. Now let's look at 5. When the button 5 is powered, then it sends out this 1 tick pulse, and then that gets lengthened to 4, then that gets sent into this torch set and powers this repeater up here. This, the 2 delay from the torches is counteracted, or I guess delayed simultaneously by this piece down here. So what happens? Well, oops. What happens is I break some redstone. What happens? 4 ticks go by, then 2 more ticks go by, then this is being powered and this is being powered. Or sorry, this is starting to receive power and this is being powered. So the redstone line will be active for 4 ticks, and after 1 tick, this repeater will be active for 4 ticks. So what happens is, for the first tick, this is active, but this isn't yet. For the next 3 ticks, the power has finally gotten through this repeater, so this will be active and this will be active. Then on the 4th tick, this will shut off, meaning this will shut off, but this will still be on for 1 tick as the power keeps going through it, so this will end up being on for 5 ticks. Let me explain that again with 8. Oh, for all of these here, these are 4 tick delay. Here we have a 1 tick, 2 tick, 3 tick, 4 tick, 4. But here's 8. So once again, 1 tick, then it gets delayed up to 4 ticks. Now we have a 4 tick pulse going in. This powers up and down this line and over into this back line here. So for 4 ticks, this bottom line is being powered. After those 4 ticks are up, the current finally gets through this repeater into this line for another 4 ticks. That's your 8 ticks. So for the first 4 ticks, it's using the bottom, and then for the next 4, it's using the top. For 7, for the first 4 ticks, it's using the bottom. For the last 3 ticks, it's using the top. Now, when we get on to 9 through 12, it works fairly similarly. Here, we just pull the current out in the middle, and then delay it 1 more time. So here, it gets delayed for 4 ticks on the top, comes back in, then for an additional tick, it's delayed and goes into there. So let me explain this again with 12. Makes a 1 tick pulse, extended to 4. Power gets sent to the main line. Then, for the first 4 ticks, power gets sent to the main line. Then for the next 4 ticks, power gets sent to the second line. Then for the next 4 ticks, power gets sent to the third line. Only one of them is powered at a time. In other ones, it's basically the same 4 ticks in each location, but they get sort of overlapped a little bit more, reducing the overall time. So, the upshot of all this is if you hit one of these buttons, it makes a signal on this line for the appropriate amount of time. Now let me talk about the decoder. This is a lot more tricky, that's why it's nice and color-coded. I actually find it a lot easier to talk about this at the very end rather than the very beginning, just because we can talk about the yellow and then talk about the blue. The red, the green, then the blue. Let's talk about the yellow. Some of you might recognize this structure. What it looks like if you were to take, well, it looks like the old 1 tick pulse designs. I'm actually going to break all of my machinery while I do this. I'm actually going to rebuild one of them here, and then I will explain why they don't work anymore. The old design, you put a redstone repeater here, you put a block on top, you put a torch here, you put a block there, you put redstone here, and you put a torch here. The idea being, if you power this block, for 1 tick, power will be off. So this torch will be powered, this redstone line will be off, and then this torch can turn on. Then after 2 ticks, it'll turn back off again. However, torches don't react that fast. They now take 1.5 ticks to change state. So this doesn't work. That's why I'm not quite using it. Alright, what am I doing? Well, it's something similar to that. So as you can see, this is 2 and this is 4. So for the first 1 tick, this torch turns off. 3 ticks, after 3 ticks, this line turns off because this repeater turns off. On the 4th tick, it turns back on again. So the upshot of this, there'll be a 1 tick off pulse that runs down this line. Then, up here, this gets inverted. So currently this is powered, but this will depower for a tick, which means that this torch will power for a tick. Sorry, this block will depower for a tick, which means this torch will power on for a tick. And that will have absolutely no effect whatsoever. The line will stay on because this torch will power this to the redstone line. After an additional tick, this will turn off, but the redstone line will still be powered from here. Now, here's the tricky bit. When power finally turns off to this bottom block, so let's imagine that power is currently on. So this is what this looks like on top here. I'll show you that. No, I'm not going to show you that this doesn't work. It's once again, this takes 1 tick to power, and then this will depower after 2 ticks. That's fine. But on the reverse end, on the off, or on the downward pulse, I guess as you say, this torch will turn off, and for 1 tick there will be an off pulse, and then this will turn on again. And this is basically the theory by which this entire design works, is that you can generate this off pulse for when it turns on, and this off pulse for when it turns off. So basically you can generate a pulse whenever the signal on this line turns off and on. Well, what do I do with that? Well, pretty simply, I time out the amount of time after the on pulse and the amount of time after the off pulse. Let me present this a little bit, or let me try and talk about this a little bit more simply. Imagine this made us an on pulse rather than an off pulse. The red line turned on and the green line turned on at exactly the right times. I delay the green line so that now the red line and the green line both turn on for that same 1 tick at the same time. Then what I would do is I would AND them together and then produce the output. I do a similar thing here, except as some of you may know, in an AND gate you invert both the inputs and then invert the output. So I start off with inverted inputs, and then I invert the output. The inversion here looks a little bit weird. It's not just a torch, because torches can't react fast enough. Pistons, however, can. This piston is able to, within 1 tick, retract, give power to this block, and then extend again. So, what happens one more time from the top? When the system gets power, it makes a 1 tick off pulse that runs down the line. When it loses power, it makes a 1 tick off pulse that I can't even catch, it's too fast, that runs on this top line. That's the basis of the yellow circuit. The green circuit delays that on pulse, the red circuit doesn't delay the off pulse. So that if, and only if, the signal is the right length, i.e. the on pulse, the point where it turns on and the point where it turns off are the right distance apart, then both of these will turn off for the same tick. This piston will be allowed to retract, and power will go through to this block. You can, of course, pull power out of this block however you like. Keep in mind it's a 1 tick pulse, so don't use a torch. Then the idea behind it is, of course, just take every single one and make the list of repeaters a little bit smaller. Now I'm going to demonstrate this with a little bit of a practical example. I'm going to hit one of the later buttons. Let's try 10. And then I'm going to jump up over here and look at this. Now if you see light 10 flashed, let me show you that again. That's just what happens. That's what you want to happen. That's the 10 light, 12, 11, 10. But now I want you to see if you can keep your eyes on these repeaters right here. And if you watch, you'll see they all flicker off in sequence. That's because the signal hits the on signal is being delayed appropriately for each of them. So if for each one it hits the on signal gets delayed a different amount of time. But what you could in theory see is that the off signal triggers off all of these lines simultaneously. The reason you can't see that is that for quite a few of them this repeater ends up back powering the line. Oh well. But it's not, that's only an issue in terms of visibility, not in terms of function. So what happens, again ignoring this sort of weird back power, all the top redstone turns off simultaneously on the same tick, because that's the same tick that this line is going off, or I mean it's 2 ticks after, but it's relative to the same tick this line turns off. And then wherever the off pulse is will correspond to the spot that the light gets lit up. So that's why having a nice array like this is useful. Now for what Etho was trying to use this for, namely put these in different spots around the world, a particular array is not as useful as just one particular one of these. I made them 1 wide. Technically they're 2 wide, or more accurately they're 1 wide non-stackable, just because of this redstone dust. I made them one wide just because I found that that was a pretty straightforward way to use them. Also, it makes them a lot easier to see. But yeah, I really find this to be a pretty simple design. Also, it's not that crazy compared to some of the stuff I've made. Though again, I haven't made the craziest stuff. You should see some of the stuff out there. Anyways, it's not too crazy. It's actually not too resource intensive either. No comparators being used, of course, because it's duration. Though I did have a theory at one point. The encoder is actually the most expensive. It's more expensive than any. Well, no, it's probably equally expensive. This really does take a lot of repeaters. But one more thing I was going to talk about: one-tick pulses. I mentioned them briefly, that torches can't take one-tick pulses. That's why this system would fail if you tried to give this a one-tick pulse. The reason it would fail is none of these torches would trigger. So it would be impossible to get this signal to turn off, ever, because none of them would see the down pulse. More accurately, none of them would see the up pulse either. So that's why you need at least a 2-tick pulse on the system. That being said, that's not a huge restriction for this. One last thing. The number of repeaters here is actually 1 less than the pulse length. The reason for this is that signal goes here and here. The 1 tick in which it's going to be off, let me just turn the system on for a little bit. The 1 tick in which it's going to be off is going to be, well, let's see what would happen. Power goes off here. This one turns off. Or sorry, this block turns on, this block turns off. This line turns off. It takes 2 ticks. Let's look down here. This block turns on, this block turns on, takes 3 ticks, and then on the 4th tick it'll be turned on again. Am I saying that right? No, I'm not saying that right at all. That's why it's confusing. It's confusing because these are actually happening simultaneously, or not quite simultaneously, but in sequence, not separately. So you have to imagine this repeater represents. No, screw it. We're going over to 12. It's so much easier to see things over here. You have to imagine that basically the signal is somewhere along this line as we're in this switch procedure. The signal is somewhere along this line, and we're going to depower it. It's going to take... Okay, I think I've got a better way of explaining this. It takes 3 ticks to power this. It takes 3 ticks from the line turning on to power this line, to give to depower this line, to give the 1-tick pulse in this line. It takes 3 ticks. 1, 2, 3. But it only takes 2 ticks to depower this line. 1, 2. That's why you need to introduce, or to change the delay between the two of them by 1 tick. Because effectively you are, I want to say, lengthening the length of this signal from what would be, no, I'm sorry, you're effectively shortening the signal because you're taking the on tick and you're moving it 3 ticks forwards. You're taking the off tick and you're only moving it 2 ticks forwards. The entire signal gets shortened by 1. Note that that's not a reason why you can't use 1-tick pulses. You could just have 0 repeaters if that were to work. But of course it doesn't. Torches don't react fast enough. So once again, because on the rising edge, it takes 3 ticks to send a pulse down this line, or a negative pulse down this line, and on the falling edge it takes 2 ticks, 1, 2. Then you need to decrease the number of repeaters here by 1, because effectively you're shortening the signal by 1 tick. If you don't care for any of the redstone, this whole thing will work just fine. If you really don't care for any of the redstone, you can actually just use stone buttons, which have a delay of 10, wooden buttons, which have a delay of 15, and you can use 1 tick, which are just extended simply for 2, 3, and 4, and not have to worry about any of this fancy malarkey. Or, if you feel even less fancy than that, you can just set up some horrible, slow delay system. This is just nice and compact. So once again, I'm going to run over the wiring here. 2-tick repeater, into a piston, into a 4-tick, into a torch, redstone line, needs to be connected down there. Here's your delay circuit. Here we're delaying 8 additional ticks beyond the initial 4 from lengthening the pulse. Here we aren't lengthening at all, and note that you can't use 1-tick pulses. For the circuit over here, it's block, torch, block, torch. Break things, block, torch, block. Redstone, redstone, repeater on 2, so effectively repeater on 0, repeater on 2, repeater on 4, redstone, redstone. Number of repeaters equal to your delay minus 1, redstone on the top. Then we put a redstone dot here, that's actually highly important. Piston, torch, block with output power. Got it? Good. Well, until next time, this is Darkid, and this is hopefully a more efficient solution to sending redstone multiple places. See you then.